Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Studio Memoirs. Once again, we're going to have a few stories for you. Today, we're going to be talking about Robert Plant again. So I guess this is Robert Plant number 2, right? It was back in the 90s, around about 1994, I think it was, 93, 94, 95. I can't remember. My brain's like a sieve nowadays. But I was on tour with Robert, and there's many ways to be on tour, and I've done them all. You could do the house concert thing like I do. You get in the car, and you basically just, show up with the acoustic guitar and you say hi to everybody. That's probably my favourite way to tour. It's very friendly, it's very personable. It's, you're in a house of like anywhere between, 10 and 50 people max. And you're just in the process. Sometimes, they talk about, when I do my psychology certificates and all that, they talk about like the difference between Freud and Jung. Freud kind of sat on a couch and looked at you and said, well, you're messed up, and you tell me what's messed up about you, I'll tell you what's wrong with it, and then I'll tell you it back. Jung didn't say that. Jung said that he was part of the process. He was in the water with you. Like he was in the bath with you. He couldn't remove himself from it. And so house concerts are kind of like that. It isn't like you're on the stage and, and I'm Freud and I'm saying, I'm doing all this. You're in the house concert. You're in the process. The audience become part of the process. So there's that type of touring, right, which I love. Then there's the pub gigs, which I love. I love pub gigs. I was at a pub gig last night. I went to see a Grateful Dead tribute band. Amazing. There was only 4 of them, actually. And there was one guitar, one bass, one drums, and a girl singing. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. They completely captured the spirit of the Dead with the guitar player playing really light like Jerry did. It was just fantastic. So I loved that. Then there's the kind of, you get into like a few bigger gigs, you get into like the It Bites thing. I mean, what did we do? Like anywhere from like 500 to like Hammersmith Odeon. What's that? Like, 2,000, I don't know what it is. 2,000-3,000. You do that whole thing. There's them, doing our stuff. And then you hit that other place where you start doing what Robert and Emma guys are doing. That was a whole different level of touring for me. I'd done gigs before. I remember It Bites, we opened for Marillion back when they were humongous in the early days. They played like NEC, I think that's like 10,000 or something, is it? And we were fortunate enough, and the guys from Marillion were kind enough to invite us on tour with them, which was great. I'm sure we paid them a lot of money to do it, but I'll say Steve Rothery, see if he'll give me it back. And then, but these stadium gigs, right? This is another level. It's just absolutely amazing. And I'm in my element in that. I love it. I mean, I love all of it, but like, it's a great thing to, you get picked up in the morning in like a limousine and you carted off to the airport and you get in a private jet and you fly to Rome and the Romans are there and you play and the helicopter takes you over to a TV show and you blah, 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 and everybody's kissing your ass and you're doing all that. I'm good at that. I'm real good at it. And I loved it. So Robert, I was so incredibly, still am to this day, what's the word? Grateful is not enough of a word to say. I'm so grateful that I got to do that sort of life. It's only because of Robert, because nobody wants to see me. That 20,000 people want to see me. I'm looking to get like two drunks outside of a pub to want to watch my shit, But Robert took me on the tour with him. And I just had the time of my life, 2 or 3 years, absolutely amazing. We did like huge stadiums every night, and it's a whole thing. You hang out with the crew. The crew guys are amazing. I always used to hang out with the crew, even with It Bites. I'm still friends to this day with the crew members, like all over the place, like all my guitar techs. I loved them all. All of them. They're just amazing. Some of them have, I've been friends with them for like 40 years, some of them. But I used to love the crew guys. The crew guys were always cool. They had that kind of Saxondale sarcastic humour that crew members have. The crew guys have always got that. I remember Bison, who used to do the road crew for Genesis. Jeff. And I used to tell him, because he knew I was a Genesis nut, and he was from Cumbria. I said, well, tell me about, like, what are they like and what do they do? This is before I met them all, And he would tell me all about that. But the crew guys are great, really nice guys. And so I got to do that. And it's just amazing. You just 5-star hotels, best of everything, Marshall giving you whatever you want. If you want a guitar, you just order it. It's just nuts. It's just a wonderful thing. And old Big Eddie, I'm in my prime in that stuff. I love it. I can adapt anywhere, I can play in a shithole for like 2 people. And I can play like, in front of like, the David Letterman show in front of about 30 million people on American TV. It's like, I'm good for it all. I like all that. It doesn't really occur to, when I play house concerts and people goes, well, how do you do that? And but it's like a thing. It's like a whole thing. People don't understand. If all you can play stadiums, then you're not very. You're kind of weak, isn't that? That's a bit weak, isn't it? What did Bob Marley say? Some people are so poor, all they have is money. I love that. I think it's a great thing, right? And so. So here I am in my element. I've got my, I'm doing my gear. I've got my long blonde hair and I'm skinny. I've got my 6-pack abs. And I used to wear boxers outfits. People often say to me, why do you wear those? What are them mental shorts you've got? And what are them weird outfits you keep wearing? It's boxer shorts. I'm obsessed with boxing. I'm obsessed with it. I've got a big bag to this day, a big, huge bag of VHS at my niece Stacey's house. Well, she's probably threw them out now, but I used to order them online off the TV and all that all the time, or in magazines. Or I'd go into a VHS shop, a video shop before Blockbusters used to have like private ones, and you could buy them in there. So I had all these, I've got tons of them, like literally probably like 150 of them, these videos of all the old fights that I'm obsessed with it. So those outfits, those glittery outfits like Oscar De La Hoya would wear off, it's a flash thing, being a boxer, they're all glitzy and flash. So I used to love all that. A bit of an old narcissist. I used dressing up in glittery suits and all that. I love all that. I'm totally up for all that. I mean, not so much now because I just, I'm not really that interested in it. But back then I loved it. It was fantastic dressing up, getting your stuff on. I've got a good Lenny Kravitz story about all that. I'll tell you about that one day. So anyway, so we're doing all this and I'm introduced to these things that I would never be introduced to in my life because nobody's that interested in me. And everybody's interested in Robert. When you hang out with Robert and you go, it doesn't matter where you are, you get off a plane it doesn't matter where you are. It's just a mob, like right away. He's just mobbed from like the second he wakes up till he goes to bed. It's like, it's exhausting sometimes as well, to hang out with Robert because you see, it's just like, damn. You wonder why he like just wants to like, wear like a weird hat or put his head down or something like that. But it's, it's exhausting. So because of this, and so hanging out with the crew members, so I used to hang out with the crew members of Robert Plant's band, and the bus driver, the huge, lorry driver, one of the guys was called, I think we had about 2 or 3 of them. One of the guys was called Nate, I think. But he was the nicest guy. He was kind of like, I don't know, he was like Korean or he had like an Asian background or he was like Haitian or I don't know what he was. I don't want to be I don't want to insult anybody. I know that some of them cultures get angry if you call them. It's like calling Scottish people Australian. Are you Australian? They're just like, no, like it's all that, And so Nate was a sweet guy. We only saw him at about 4 o'clock because that's when he'd wake up because the guys who drive the trucks, they kind of drive all night. They pull in the morning, like 8 o'clock into the gig. They set up, they park exactly outside, and then they go to bed. And it gets taken from there. So they're sleeping all day while the crew's setting the show up. And it's really exciting as well when you're doing those tours because you've got like the catering section. It's a great big catering place where you all go in and there's all people hanging out having food, and the crew and the band are there, and the tour managers running around screaming at somebody, and it's just like a whole thing. The record company people come down. It's just a great vibe to be a part of that. It's just a beautiful thing, man. Really good. It's like healthy for your soul. And so Nate was a cool guy. And so we were doing an American tour for about 2 or 3 months, I think. And Nate said, because it was coming to Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving in the US is a big deal. It's like Christmas Day or it's like Easter Sunday or something like that. People take it off. So we didn't have a gig on Thanksgiving, but we were playing Madison Square Garden on the Friday. So let's say, for instance, it was a Thursday, Thanksgiving was on a Thursday, the Friday was Madison Square Garden, right? And I played Madison Square Garden a load of times with like Jethro Tull and loads of people. We've done it before. But when you show up there, but we were always like the support band, you know what I mean? I was always the support, but when you show up there as like the main, I'm all that, and it's just in the, it's your catering now. It's really Robert's, but you say I'm coming to my catering, you're doing all that. So Nate had said, well, if you guys aren't going anywhere, why don't you come down to New Jersey? This is where he lives, and have Thanksgiving with me, my family, and all my pals. I've got all my pals down there. They're bikers. And so we're kind of like, oh, dude, that's way cool, I'll go and hang out with these biker guys. And then we found out it was like a biker gang. But we still thought like, biker gang, cool. Nate was like a Hell's Angel or something. We didn't know. And I think Charlie knew. I think Charlie, the bass player, maybe knew. Charlie Jones. But he hadn't really talked about it. None of us had really. I didn't know, put it that way. I didn't know that Nate was a Hell's Angels guy. Because he was the nicest guy on the planet, right? And so I'm all like, yeah, the bikers, I go down my leather pants and my, my biker gear. Yeah, I'm a biker. So we pull into this, we go into this forest. It's like in a forest, and we go driving through. It's like a, like a private housing thing. And we pull in and we go in there. There's all these bikers in there. There's maybe I would say realistically, maybe 10 to 12 of these bikers. And they weren't particularly friendly, dude. I'll tell you that right now. Because you think it's going to be fun. You think it's going to be fun. Oh, it's all great and blah, blah. Dude, I'm telling you, it was like, and I'm always trying to find out what's going underneath the scenes. No matter what's happening, I can feel everything. I can feel things all the time. In fact, I'm doing a course right now. I'm in the middle of it. A crash course on drug and alcohol counselling, which I love all that stuff. And I don't know whether I'll use it or not, or whether I'll go into clinical psychology or anything like that. But I start my my master's program, my master's degree, on August the 31st of this year. So you might see me do that a bit on here. But anyway, regardless, so I'm usually checking out things. I love the whole underbelly of things. I love the what's really going on. I love all that stuff. So I'm clocking this vibe. And it's definitely dangerous, man, I'm telling you. It's just not weird. And the weird thing is because the leader of that bike gang, he was the nicest of all of them. It was almost like, it reminded me of the mafia. You see the mafia guys and they're like, hey, how you doing? And they're all polite and stuff. But the other guys around him, there was one in particular, one of them had bullet holes in him. I can't mention any names because I don't know if they'll come after me or not, so I don't want to say anything. But one of them had bullet holes in him, and he took the bullet shots to protect the leader guy. And the leader guy was a real sweet man. He was really nice guy. You would just think it was like a guy who went to church or something. I mean, he had his leather jacket on and all that, but he was like, you wouldn't, if you met him in a bar or something, you wouldn't think he was that. But these guys were into protection rackets. And they were probably doing drug money, it was all that. I don't even want to say what it was. It's none of my business, to be honest. It's none of my business, guys, if you're watching this. I'm all innocent. But one of them had bullet holes in him. Now, there was another one. He had long hair, but he pulled the sides back and he had it I remember that, he had it in a ponytail at the back. So he still had long hair, but there was, you get them guys with that hair at the back. And he was a scary looking bastard, man. He was really, really scary. And I remember thinking, because that was the one, I found out that he was the guy who kept the guns. He had all the guns and the drugs or whatever it is they were doing. All the bad stuff was at his house. Because if they got caught, he was the one who was going to take the rap. He would go to jail for 15 years. It's one of them things, and you're thinking so now I'm thinking and they're starting to drink, and I don't drink it. I don't drink it. So I haven't drank for 35 years. I haven't drunk for ages, and I'm sitting there, so everybody's having a drink, they're doing all this, and I'm just sitting there watching this stuff go on, right? And I'm thinking, this isn't a good idea, because they're getting more aggressive, and they're starting to, shout. They're starting to, your status as Robert Plant's guitar player is gone now. You're just some kind of victim in their house, that they were gearing up towards being a bullies. You know what I mean? It was that type of thing. And I remember one time, this has got nothing to do with this story, but I remember it was a similar thing. There's a restaurant downtown in New York City, and I remember going with some very rich people down there, and we were in that restaurant, and it was one of the head editors for like a huge magazine. I can't remember which one, like Vogue or something, I don't know. But some guy, he was a Gemini, I remember he was a Gemini. And he was all incredibly, it looked like he was on cocaine all the time, but he wasn't, he was just a Gemini. And about halfway through our meal, 3 guys walked into the restaurant and they were very nice and polite, but the whole place just went, it was like, and they were mafia guys, like real, like for real, like, and they were incredibly nice. And they sat down and everybody laughed at their jokes, like that Joe Pesci thing. You know, I remember, and this was the same type of thing. You know, these guys were like, you know, I was trying to like reckon with, I was trying to like be funny, and they just weren't having any of it, dude. And it was just getting progressively worse and worse as it went on. It was just getting really, you know, they just had no respect for us anymore. They'd like gone over they didn't like us anywhere, especially me, because I was like giving it that, you know, and they didn't like us anywhere, but especially when they started to get, you know, they were like, you know, half a bottle of whiskey in, and it was just like, and I could sense that we needed to get out of there sooner or later, because it was just getting, you know, it wasn't getting good. And that's the thing you got to remember, like you might get into good situations with people sometimes, like, and I've been in a few positions like this, where you've got in because of somebody else's, you know, mojo. Like this is only because of Robert's mojo we got in. But it was a bad idea from day one. And so now I'm sitting there, I'm thinking like I'm sober, I'm in the middle of a forest with these people who literally kill people, like for real, like I'm not joking, dude, for real. Like this is real shit, like proper shit. This isn't like I'm trying to blow it, this is proper stuff, dude. Like these guys were the real deal. They were running all sorts of shit. And I just clocked the whole thing and I was like, I got to get out of here quick. You know, and we're kind of, you don't want to go yet, but you know, they're into that stage like that. And it's kind of like, I remember thinking like, dude, this is because it was dangerous, because I can feel things. It was definitely dangerous, dude. You know, I was right. I was absolutely right. It was definitely not, like, you don't want to be there. Like who I am, some kid from the northwest coast of England, from a little town called Egremont, shouldn't have been in a house with a bunch of Hells Angels who kill people, who are holding guns, running like serious amounts of drugs and all that stuff. And there I am for Thanksgiving in there. And I'm just like, and we eventually got out and we drove off, and it was just, and I got out of there and I was just like, damn, dude, that's the scariest shit I've ever done. That was the craziest thing, man. It was just like this whole thing. But here's what's interesting. The next night we were at Madison Square Garden and we invited them to come. And they showed up, and they showed up from being this terrifying gang in their own vibe. And when they showed up in New York City, when there's like loads of different types of people, see, I always felt comfortable in New York, when there was like Chinese and there was like, you know, like Puerto Ricans and there was like, you know, Irish, and I always felt comfortable in that. I don't know, I just kind of felt comfortable in New York City. I never got bothered in New York City. I was always like, I felt part of the city all the time when I lived there. But they got out of they come in for sound check, and I remember seeing them on the street, and they were terrified, dude. They looked terrified. They looked like I'd looked the night before in the head house. They were kind of like, they were all like worried, and they were like looking around and all that, because the city scared the shit out of them. You know, they didn't have their protection stuff, and they weren't like all that in their town, you know, and they were terrified. They were absolutely terrified. They came in, there was no, you know, we gave them some beers and like all that stuff like that, and they were way, way, way different that night. It was very different, and it was really weird to see them, how awkward they were outside of their comfort zone, you know. And one of the things that, you know, I always, you know, when I see people like that, especially people in fear, because I have a very fearful background myself. Anybody with a mouth like mine, it's always fear. I've told you that before on here. It's fear. It's all fear. Like Mike Tyson's, I'm going to kick you. Like fear. It's always fear. We're loaded with the shit, dude, all the time. But when you start to notice your fear, which I know mine intimately. I've been frightened all my life. I've been terrified all my life. I didn't realize it, you know, when I look back in hindsight, and I'm like, wow, dude, that was like, it's almost like kind of sad. You know, I'm living like that. You know, it's really, really weird. But you look at these, I wanted to find out, like, you know, like what sort, like what sort of people do the Hells Angels thing? Like, are they a type? Because people are often a type, when you get into that, you got like bass players, they're a type. Like, the guitar players are a type, singers are a type, drummers are a type. I think we spoke about that last week, with Chad Wackerman. But I noticed that the first thing I noticed about these people is they felt like they were a family, like they were definitely one unit. Like, it wasn't like 12 guys, it was a family. Like, and they were, because they were given that off. Like, when I did the research, most of these people come from like really fractured backgrounds. So what's the Hells Angels type? That type, they have high stress environments that they were brought up in. A lot of violent backgrounds, even combat veterans like Vietnam people, you see a lot of combat guys go into it because their adrenaline's that high. And the club provides, first of all, unconditional loyalty, which is something, when people have, bad upbringings, like loyalty is not a thing that they experience. So to find a place where they fit in and they have this unconditional loyalty, a rigid kind of all for one social contract with each other, it's them types, like, it's that types. And of course, identity, it's like a clear sense of who they are in the world. There's no doubt I'm a Hells Angel. Like, this is who I am. And they identify with it, like, really strong. Obviously, the other thing about them is they're very high sensation-seeking people. Like a search for, really intense experiences that can, high speed, going 100 miles an hour. That rock climbing, even them type of people do that. Adrenaline, that's what I'm looking for. That's the word I'm looking for. Like the people who, they kind of love adrenaline. And they also, I researched that they like physical confrontation. They're not, they're not going to be pleasing or anything like that. They like the adrenaline of physical confrontation. They all like it. Again, this is their type. They obviously have a resistance to authority, which is probably like a bad relationship with their fathers. They have antisocial tendencies, a lot of these people, where they can't like really socialize like the rest of us can. And so they have these like little, cliques that they go to, they're one percenters, like that, that type. Outsiders, they're really outsiders, they feel like they're outsiders. They have a very low rate of agreeableness. People who are agreeable get paid less. People who are not agreeable get paid more. Oftentimes I used to hear Jordan Peterson talk about teaching women how to be less agreeable so they get paid more. That's like a big, that's a big part of their psychology. Also, they were hyper masculine. There was absolutely no feelings. Just like, there's no softness, there's no compromise, it's just this, I'll smash you down thing. But here's the weird thing, they probably think that society's like rigged, you know what I mean? But a lot of gang members are like this, even the young gangs out in Compton and all that, they just think society's against them, like they've been, they're being marginalized by the system. The system's against them, like they're never going to be able to make anything. Whereas, the agencies and powers of government, they don't stand it, they can't fit into that. But within this gang, there is also an agency of power. There's a hierarchy, the Hells Angels and the Mongols and all that stuff like that, they can achieve status in these things. Like, it's like an army, it's like the army ranks, it's like the military. The traditional workforce doesn't have these rules and these ranks, these rank and file things where if I, beat another granny up, I'll get another badge. This is like the military. It's like really similar to that. They're very similar to military people. And obviously the need for structure, even though you think they're wild and all that stuff, they aren't wild at all, actually. This is the weird thing. They thrive in highly disciplined and like paramilitary structures. Think about it. They're not wild. There's a whole chain of command in the Hells Angels or the Mongols. The strict laws that they have to obey these rules, like really strict. They have mandatory meetings, which they call church. They have to go. Like, it isn't, it's not like, you can do whatever you want. You can't do whatever you want in those things. Like, you are absolutely locked in. completely locked into, to the laws and the chain of command, the strict chain of command that probably satisfies a need for, psych for order. They need orderly stuff. So it's like they've come out of chaos, and you think it's wild and nuts and all that, but actually there's a whole structure around it, which is probably been missing from their private lives. So they seek it out through Hells Angels gangs and Mongols. Now, I thought, when I went to research that, I thought that was fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I thought it was, the military guys having the same kind of thing as anybody with a need for structure and discipline like that to that sort of degree. And so that was a fascinating study for me with the Hells Angels. And I wouldn't recommend doing that, to be honest. I wouldn't recommend hanging out with them. I don't think it's fun. I think the Rolling Stones and various groups have tried having them, involved in, their business or things like that. They're not loyal to you. They're loyal to within their gang. They're going to do what they do. And it's only when you attack, they're going to buck the system. You tell them to do this, they're just going to buck the system. And so that was my experience with the Hells Angels via my connection to Robert. It was only because of Robert I got to do that. And so I'm grateful now because I'm alive, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't shit my pants. It was absolutely terrifying, especially it was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and I thought, whoa, I'd been there since 4 o'clock, and it was all starting to get a bit wild. That was the point. I was like, dude, you got to get me out of here right now. Now, I don't think, I think Robert just said hello to them or something like that. I mean, knew them, obviously, because he's known Nate. Nate's been driving them trucks for a bunch of their tours. But I don't think Robert really bothered with them either. I think he probably knew, and it was just for people like me who needed to have a nice baptism in the Hells Angels or the Mongols or whatever they were. That was my story of the Hells Angels from Robert Plant and Madison Square Garden. And if you press that subscribe button, I won't have to go into Hells Angels, and you'll just get me loads of followers and subscribers, which is what we're after on here, right? I hope you're enjoying my my videos. Please keep watching. Tell everybody about it. Just say, listen, there's a guy who hangs out with Hells Angels on that YouTube thing. Go and check him out, and and press the subscribe button. All right, guys, it's a pleasure to hang out with you like this. I hope I'll see you soon at some point. I hope you join me next week for another episode of Studio Memoirs. Peace, love, cash, and no Hells Angels.